Now then, we know how to play it, but how do we represent it? Because that's sort of the other side of the same coin. And if you look right here above my head, here is the C scale written out, just like you can see it here too. And it's written on a thing called the staff. These 5 lines are the staff. But these 5 lines don't have any meaning until I give them a clef sign. So this first clef that we're going to learn is the G clef or the treble clef. Treble, T-R-E-B-L-E. Again, these are all in your book in the first few pages. So I want to note one thing that I put here on my handouts. It's funny, I call these handouts from habit. Koska Payne Tonal Harmony textbook uses the number C4 as middle C. But you see over here on my keyboard from GarageBand uses C3 for middle C. It just happens that there's a sort of basic disagreement. In the electronic music world, like GarageBand, they chose to use C3 as middle C. And in a more traditional way, Koska Payne uses C4. In our assignments, we will always use C4 as middle C. Again, let me move this a little bit. Help, where'd I go? Do this, and I'll do this. Now, so I can play it, and again, let me bring my keyboard to the foreground. When I play it, now let's say that what I just played for you is my masterpiece, and I want somebody else to play what I just played for you. Well, that's one of the reasons we write things down. That's one of the reasons for music notation. So here could be my score for my masterpiece. I want you to play this note, and then I want you to play this note, and 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 this note. We aren't caring today about the rhythm of these things, how fast, how long. We don't care about that, just what notes. So I put a note on a line that I know to be the C line. Now again, I told you this is the G clef. It circles around, this very fancy symbol circles around the second line, which is the note G. And again, you see in this diagram I made for you. C, D, E, F, G. There's my G. That's what the clef shows. To write a C scale, there's many number of ways I can find C. I could count 5 back. G, F, E, D, C. G, F, E, D, C. There's a couple principles involved here. When I write a scale, I put a note on some starting line or space, and then I put a note on the next space or line, skipping none. So, I'm going to write a C major scale. I put a note there. There's a space here between this line and this line. I put a note there, and so forth. But what tells me that these are the right places to put them is the fact that that is the treble clef sign and shows me that the second line is G. You'll notice very early on in your textbook, I'm not nuts about this order of presentation, but they also gave you 4 clef signs right at the very beginning. And today we're going to really focus on 2 of them, the bass clef and the treble clef. But the other 2 clef I just want to point out right now are the alto clef, which is what viola players play all the time. This is very familiar to them, although for most of the rest of us it's not so familiar. But this middle line right here, where these 2 lines come together, notes the note middle C. So this scale here is the same scale as this scale here in sound. The other clef they introduced right at the beginning is the tenor clef, which is what trombone players often use when they play high on their register. Same idea, where the 2 lines come together on a line, where the clef sign shows C is right there. So this is again the exact same scale written with a different clef. Fear not, we'll get those. But that's what those are. Those are actually movable C clefs. they're called movable because there was actually originally one on every line. There was one for this line, one for this line. We kept these two and one for this line. These two are still in very common usage. If you're an orchestral player, like I said, if you're a cellist or a trombonist, you often use this. If you're a violist, you use this. The rest of the world, unless you write orchestra music, you don't care much about this. I write orchestra music. I care about it a lot. But these two other clefs, the treble clef and the bass clef, we will use all the time. So the bass clef is the F clef, and these two dots circle around the second to the top line, and they show us the note F. And this is one term that'll be new maybe for you today. It's a fifth below middle C. So again, I can start on C and count down 5. C, B, A, G, F. There's the F that this clef sign tells me is my point of reference for the bass clef. We'll work on these. Today, we don't want to focus too much on feeling like we have to memorize all of this from the beginning. What we do is we pick a few landmarks and we make those the things we care about today. So for instance, on the keyboard, where's C? That's what I care about. Where's C? And if I focus my attention on where's C, I'll get it very quickly. And it's very easy, if I know where C is, to figure out where D is. And it's very easy to figure out where E is, and where F is, where G is, and so on and so forth. And eventually, I'll know these at a glance. But again, I don't want to worry about that right now. Little by little. Okay. So clef signs. Now, another thing that is introduced very early on in the first page of your workbook is the idea of octave registration numbers. And all that means is we do have a way of specifying, let's see here, yes, and again I'll just go right back here, specifying not just that the note is C, but a specific C. So that's how I can say this is C, this is C4, because again, remember in Koska-Payne, C4 means middle C. Well, the way the registration system works, it's very straightforward, it's just a new thing. Everything in the octave above this C also has the registration number 4. So this is C4, D4, E4, F4, G4, A4, B4, and this is C5. Now all of the notes of the next octave are 5, D5, E5, F5. For this week, we will have, on most of the questions you're asked in the workbook, a specific registration number given. But you'll notice if you look ahead in the workbook, that almost never comes up again. We learn this so that we know it exists, but just be aware that most of the time when we're dealing with music, we'll just be caring about the letter name of the note, not so much these registration numbers, but it's useful to learn them. Okay, going on. We're getting just about to what I wanted to cover for today. We've learned something about the keyboard, where C is, and so we can use that as a point of reference to find all of the other keys. How we can write the note C in a C major scale, and again that means we need to be familiar with the 5-line staff and a clef sign to give those 5 lines meaning, and then these octave registration numbers, which are useful to know which C I'm talking about, which C I'm talking about, which C I'm talking about, and so on. Just so I've mentioned it again, we will come back to this next time, but the black keys can all be seen from the white key they're associated with. So for instance, here's C, and the black key right to the right of it, higher, is C sharp, or D flat. So again, each of these has 2 names. If I'm thinking of it in reference to C, I may call it C sharp. If I'm thinking in terms of raising a C, and you'll see why we do that later on. So that's pretty much all I want to do, is just sort of introduce these for those of you who are wondering about it, but I don't want to dive in too deep right now. This is D, so this is D sharp. Or this is E, and if I lowered that note because of the musical context, it would be E flat. D sharp and E flat, for our purposes, are the same. They're the same note. D sharp equals E flat. Okay? So this is where we're starting. Again, we take it one thing at a time, and then we build from that. When we get back together again, we're going to learn some more major scales, meaning we will start on a different note, but then we will build a scale using the pattern whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. So we will also learn some new issues in writing down those new scales. So here's what we do from here. I'm wrapping up this video. So your task after you sign off this video will be to read the section of the textbook. Again, it's behind me, Tonal Harmony. And the appropriate section right now is just pages 1 through 6. You'll notice on page 3, there's this thing called a self-test. Do the self-test. Always do the self-test. And here's the great thing. You'll see at the bottom of the self-test that the answers are in the back of the book. It's not a secret. So you do the self-test, and then you check your answers in the back of the book, and then you know if you've actually got this down. Then you're going to log into your R2Z account and do problem set 3. Not problem set 1 or 2. I have a felt pen on my finger. Problem set 3. Because as I told you, we're going to start with pitch information first, and our 2Z number 1 is rhythmic notation issues. So we're going to start with our 2Z set 3 and basically do the first 2 groups of questions. And these are just, you're just going to basically, click on the right key to identify something. And once you've done that, then the third thing you will do is page 1 of the Tonal Harmony textbook. And then the idea here is you will scan this or take a picture of it with your phone, however you want to do this, and send that to me. And there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either send it to me by email and attach it, or put it on the shared drive. And we'll go over that next video if that's not clear exactly how to do that. But in the meantime, please feel free to just send me that page of the workbook as an attachment, and we'll take it one step at a time. This is a new experience for all of us doing this stuff at a distance, so I'll be patient, you be patient with me, and we'll figure this all out. Okay, so until next time, good luck, and I look forward to seeing your assignments.